Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It's Chris, aka Starrapter for Outer Rim Transmission. This is episode number 98. It's the big one, the one we've been anticipating since 2020, believe it or not. We are talking, of course, about the Mandalorian Season 3 premiere. This is chapter 17, as it is counted, and this one is called The Apostate. But that isn't all. We also have the Bad Batch Season 2, episode 11, titled Metamorphosis, to also break down and discuss. And that's it, because just those two things on their own right is plenty of content to get through, probably more than enough for one show, but we're going to keep it within a 2-hour time period. But yeah, it's a big one for tonight because it's the first time in history that we have two Star Wars series coming out on the same exact day. As we've been over this many times, why doesn't Lucasfilm just space things out just a little bit? Especially considering that I feel like the Bad Batch was really good this week again, and it totally has been overshadowed by Mandalorian, as we would all obviously expect. But there you go. We're going to get into two reviews tonight, so looking forward to it. How's it going, Ben?
Good. It was another good week. It's been absolutely wild over here. It was almost 70 degrees on Wednesday, and today we're in a winter weather advisory, and we had snow throughout the day. So it's just been craziness. So yeah, it's been an interesting week in that regard, and yeah, and then of course, we had the release of Mando and Bad Batch, and it's so awesome having Mando back. Just because it's like it feels like the buzz of Star Wars is back. I don't know about you guys, but you see it on social media, whether it be Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Like I've seen so many Instagram reels, people using the Mando music, just all kinds of things like that. Just random people. I had a couple random messages from people I haven't talked to in several months, just here and there. Like they messaged me and are like, "Hey, oh my gosh, did you see Mando is back?" And blah blah blah. Like just getting random messages like that. It's cool. Like that just shows like how wide-reaching that show really is.
Oh, heck yeah. It's Star Wars season upon us. I mean, it's Star Wars season for us here on the podcast, 365 days a week. But for the mainstream, we'll call it the mainstream because that's really what the Mandalorian is about, right? Our parents got into it. Our loved ones got into it. People that haven't seen Star Wars since the original trilogy, maybe they skipped out on the sequels and the prequels, but then they started watching this for some reason. It's definitely a phenomenon, as that trailer often puts it on TV spot. The world global phenomenon has returned to Mandalore. So yeah, it's good stuff. How's it going, Milton?
I'm good, man. Just excited to be back, ready to talk some Star Wars and get into these episodes. So let's get it.
Hell yeah. Jumping off of our week in Star Wars, I just pulled one out of my brain literally 30 seconds ago as we're keeping it on track for Mandalorian. I will say it's always fun when you get all the marketing, as I was talking about last week, about, the show and tells I usually do here, but it wasn't for miniatures, it was for food. This week, I am talking about just going on Google. And I don't know if it's still activated now, but if you go on Google right now, just type into Mandalorian, all of a sudden it gives you an experience, which I guess at this point I have to spoil it since I'm already going down this rabbit hole. But basically a little Grogu pops up, like a 3D animated Grogu at the bottom of your phone. And then if you click on him, touch him, whatever, then he'll actually do like a basically pull down the trailer like using the Force, and like all these like beads, like little chocolate things out of the episode, little red candies start like flying over the screen. So I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, even Google is in on Mandalorian, but I always enjoy that, whether it be going on Twitter and using a hashtag and a bunch of Grogu's like flying across the screen suddenly or something like that. It's always a nice little reminder that Star Wars is big here, and it's bigger than ever, I think.
Yeah, I mean Star Wars is huge. Like, in that regard, like you said, you have Google, you have like you said, it's cool, like either like typing in the hashtag, or you'll see where you click the heart on some tweets, it'll like change it into like the Mando helmet sometimes, or like different things like that. I just I don't know, I love that social aspect of Star Wars. I think it's one of the best parts of the experience, because I had a discussion with one of my buddies about this. So like Netflix, that for example, they always go and release like either the half season or the full season of a show. But here's the thing. So like a couple weeks ago when the new season of Outer Banks came out, when that came out, that had some social media buzz, people talked about it, etc. Now that it's been out for a week or two, dead. Like they haven't, they're, you don't see anybody talking about it because they released the first half of the season, 10 episodes, and then they moved on basically. Like, so you see stuff like that, and it's just like, I love the week to week format more and more. Like it's so nice, building the hype and anticipation with all your friends, with people on these podcasts like us three or other podcasters. Like I think it's just the social experience of Star Wars is one of the best things, especially when we're in like a real like positive time like The Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, positive is definitely one way to put it. Go ahead, Milton.
Right. About to say, I hear you when it comes to the positivity. I totally agree on that. I'm quite the opposite when it comes to releasing. Like, honestly, I'm so used to streaming now. I'll take all 10, 12 episodes right away. Because I like to space them out, too. Like, I can't just watch them all day, every day, because, life gets in the way. Like, I do like digesting it in chunks. However, I think if you have a good show like Mandalorian, I think you can get away with the weekly releases just because it's a good show. If it's trash, then yeah, just give it to me all at once so I can just deal with it and be done with it. But because this is a good show, I'm okay with it being released weekly. I understand the buzz behind it. And in a lot of ways, this show could kind of kick off Disney Plus in the sense of it made it popular.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is where you have to obviously stick to the formula that's been working for the show.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a formula that, I was surprised they didn't, they've messed with the formula, right? So Visions, they put those all out once. Visions Volume 2, they're going to do the same. So, Tales of the Jedi, they've done that. So certain projects they will, but, they got to bring in the subscribers when it comes down to the end of it. And if it's their flagship series, they want people sticking around, not subscribing for a single month and then dipping. So, yeah, at least they can get, I guess, a solid 2 months out of them versus one.
Hey, that adds up when it's like 100 million people.
Yep. Oh yeah, Disney Plus is well over 100 million people, right? At this point, I think it's like probably getting close to 200. I think at this point.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
I mean, those are really good points. For my week in Star Wars, I'd say though to throw out there, another like mini discussion to throw out there to both of you guys and our listeners and our viewers. So an interesting thing popped up this week. It could be true, could be false, could be just a guy gassing up his buddy to like, make him sound cooler than what really was going on. But I don't know if any of you guys saw, for our listeners, I know you both did in our chat, Milton and Chris, I sent it to you guys, but so this week an interesting thing popped up. Freddie Prinze Jr. was on a podcast and he flat out said on camera that Dave Filoni directed the entire Vader sequence at the end of Rogue One. So it's just, to me, it's like, if that's true, that is wild. And like, that would make a lot of sense as to why that scene and the way it all played out was so hype. Like it just, like I feel like Dave knows that character and knows the characters, especially from the original trilogy, so well, like the Luke era stuff. It just makes sense. But then again, like I said, it could just be Freddie Prinze just like, talking his guy up, just I don't know, pulling something out of thin air. But he literally said on that podcast he wasn't supposed to tell that information. So it's just like, I wonder what the actual real story is there behind the ending of Rogue One. I really do. Like, we need that in a book someday or something.
2016, that's when Rogue One came out. What was Dave Filoni doing in 2016? Didn't Rebels end in 2016 or 2017, something like that?
It ended, I think, early 2016.
Okay. So maybe he had some time to kill. So at the end of, in the summer of 2016, a buddy of his calls him up and says, "Hey, you want to come down to the set?" He's like, "Hey, I have a couple ideas for this." Like, I mean, what does directing speak of exactly? Like, we had George Lucas technically directing in Solo because he was like, "Oh yeah, you got to have like Kira and Han Solo kiss in his closet, like do this over here."
Word probably should have been consulting or something.
Yeah, I don't think he's sitting there like taking credit for the whole scene. Maybe he was like, "Oh, maybe we should have like Vader using a force choke as he's slashing the guy in half with the force behind him." Something like I could see like him getting like a little bit of perks or credit for a little bit of improvisation, maybe off the script. Like, oh, this should be doing this. Like maybe something like that, but. Because something also interesting came up today. I didn't get a chance to really look into it already. So, but something about Ryan Johnson was talking about Dave Filoni was on set with Last Jedi or something like. There's some hubbub going on online about it today. I don't know if you know anything about that, Ben.
No, I didn't get a chance to look into that. No, that's new news to me, or that's new like speculation and rumblings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting though. That's interesting. I don't know. That whole situation with 8 is a whole.
I'm gonna try to be.
thing.
I'm not saying nothing because I'm gonna try to be nice about that movie.
With I say that whole thing was very interesting.
Actually, no. I'm gonna say this. If Ryan Johnson, if it's true that Filoni was on set for Last Jedi,
Yeah.
the whole speculation. That if it were true, the movie would have been better. But
Yeah.
it wasn't, so I don't think it was true.
Well, no.
Let's be
He
real.
was actually. I'm sure he was actually there.
Let me back up. Yes, he probably was on set. He just had no consultation of directing or story or nothing like that. So the movie wasn't great.
Well, see, the thing was, he was there, getting experience because at that point, I guess they were.
I know.
Mandalorian was in. Yeah.
I'm just being a hater because I just don't like that movie. So it's just whatever.
My thing with that whole thing is he could have been there just getting experience, literally just as as any other intern would.
Check it out.
He didn't. Obviously, Ryan Johnson had full creative control. I mean, just look at the way the movie turned out. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I think that's like a minor thing of nothing, but it's interesting. It's good. I mean, hey, it's good, Dave. Not to crack a joke about this, but Milton, you'll like this, but it's good. Dave was getting firsthand experience of what not to do with Star Wars.
Yeah.
but no, in all seriousness, I think I mean, hey, Dave, it's good Dave got that experience because after that his next live action thing or involvement was Mandalorian, and it was clear he had rust in the first season of The Mandalorian. I think, in my opinion, his 2 episodes were the 2 weakest ones of season 1. So, I just think it's good that he got experience on, a movie set, because eventually he might do a movie. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's, a minor thing.
Mm-hmm. And, Bill, do you have anything to share for this week in Star Wars?
Nothing personally. I mean, except for my boss tried to be funny about Star Wars this week.
Huh.
We were in a meeting or something for within our whole department.
Wow.
And she was waiting for the guest speaker to pop up on the screen, and she was trying to kill time, and she's like, "Oh, by the way, today's a huge day for Star Wars people because it's the first day of Mandalorian or something." And I just looked at her. I was like, that was the dumbest, corniest joke you just tried to make.
Wow.
And I know why she did it. Because she was awkward about it, though. That's the thing. I literally told her, I said, you made it really awkward, when you're trying to kill time. You shouldn't even gone that far with it. However, I love my boss, but she was just being weird, and she had to just throw Star Wars out there. And I'm just thinking, no, that didn't work. Just stop. Don't use Star Wars as a joke. You don't know how to do it. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah,
it was cute. It was cute. It was just awkward. I'm like, okay, can we just get through this meeting and just be done? Stop playing around.
Yeah, it's Star Wars has become mainstream to a certain degree, if you will. Well, it's always been mainstream, let's put it that way. But it's when people try to pick out the finer details and they're not in the know, sometimes it does come off as really corny, and you're just ooh, yeah, I'm not basically putting myself in that category.
No, it was corny. And people know at my office I like Star Wars. Hell, I got a Mandalorian helmet, behind me when I'm doing Zoom meetings. But it's okay, do not try to be funny with it. You're not good at it. And my boss is very awkward in general, so it's no, don't try.
That's great.
All right, so without further ado, we're going to get into it. But before we do, some housekeeping. If you are watching this at 9 o'clock on Friday or after the fact, we are also on any podcast streaming service of your choice. Go ahead and search Outer Rim Transmission. give us a download, give us a review and a rate as well. We would greatly appreciate it and would help us kind of get better with the algorithm to have more fans joining in on the discussion. And if you want to be joining in on the discussion live, you can join us every Friday at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern, where we always have some good Star Wars banter and chats in the live chat, just like Dark Nerdy Gonzo chiming in. He went to the mall over the weekend and grabbed the vintage classic, the vintage collection mall loyalist Mandos on clearance for $11. Yeah, that's the thing, is some of these figures, they will just, like, if it's the exclusive figure for that exact retail place, they will make like 20 of them and send them to the stores, and they will never sell, and you'll see them on the pegs, and the next thing you know, they got to drop the price by like 3/4 on those things or something like that. But yeah, so go ahead, you could join in the discussion. As for our releases this week, here we go. I'm going to try to do this in all one breath without taking a breath, because, oh my gosh, we just had a mega load of Star Wars comics, a mother load, if you will. The Mandalorian issue number 8, Hyperspace Stories issue number 4, The Blade issue number 3, Star Wars issue number 32, Hidden Empire issue number 4, Hot and Chewbacca issue number 10. If you want to see any of those, go ahead and check out the review on the channel right now. Yes, I am not kidding. They all came out in a single day, and I'm going to run out of oxygen. Okay.
I know we're not going to like spend long on this topic, but I do have a thing to throw out there on that. Like, you release all of those in 1 week, and it's the Mandalorian premiere week. Like, who schedules this stuff?
The worst part is Marvel's been in business for almost 100 years, and they still can't get their distribution correct. It's like, what the heck? Like, part of me thinks it's got to be they did it because of Mando hype. They wanted to build off Mando hype. They figure, like, everybody's going to be like the Star Wars hype. They're like, oh, you know what? I haven't been to my comic book shop in a long time. Let me go there. And it's like, oh, wow, I have all these awesome Star Wars comics, because there's no reason to have them do that. I mean, Dark Horse had 1 issue. Marvel had 5. Dark Horse, they have enough problems on their own right, because they never get their comics out on time. They're constantly delayed. So I got a bone to pick with them. But come on, Marvel, like, you guys had to put out 5. And it sucks because, like, in my review, if you watch it, I'm doing like 2 minutes on each comic, where I usually spend 5 or 6, because it's just, there was so much to read in one day that I just had to get through all those comics. And, you know, it sucks because one of the comics, that was the final issue. It was Han Solo Chewbacca issue number 10, and that happened to be the last issue. So I feel like that completely got swept under the rug, because then you have Hidden Empire, you have Star Wars, you have Blade, you have Mandalorian issue number 8. And don't get me started on the Mandalorian comics, because I've already gone on enough tangents about why do you release the comics that have nothing to add to the story. They literally carbon copy of the damn... If you want to read them, just go watch the show. You know, it's like, oh, you can make the argument. Well, like, oh, I don't have Disney Plus. Well, let's see. Each comic issue is like $4.99, because they're charging an extra $1 because they have like 3 extra pages. It's like, just spend another $1 and you would have Disney Plus for every month that you're gonna buy the comic, and there you go. It's like, it's literally a collector's thing. And the worst part is they're making a season 2, and I've already said I'm not gonna read those unless they come out in trade paperback, because I don't want to waste my time, and I don't want to waste the money as much, because it'll be cheaper if you buy them in a trade versus each single issue individually. And I'm not saying like they're crappy. Like, the artwork, the creativity is great. It's just, I don't like the direction of whoever decided to do this decision on just putting these things out. Like, and it was way past its date. Like, Mandalorian season 1's been out for 3 years now. Like, or yeah, 4 years now. It's like, why'd they wait till now to do it? I don't know. But anyway, we have too many better things to talk about today, so I don't want to go and hark on that again. But yeah, go just check out the review, everybody, and hopefully you enjoy those videos, or that video. Okay. I think we're gonna go in the order in which I watched these. So I woke up earlier than I wanted to, we'll put it that way, on Wednesday, because I knew I had to read these 6 comic books, right? So I had to get up early, and I still didn't read them all before I started my work shift. But anyway, so I watched The Bad Batch first, and we're going to start with that. So The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 11, Metamorphosis. No, it was not as bad as Season 1. What was it called again, Ben? It was like the bug one, or Infestation. Infestation. It was the opposite. I really enjoyed this episode. I don't know about you guys. We haven't really said anything about it since recording this right now, but I was really happy with this. It brought back something that people have been kind of like jokingly kind of like brought back in our hindsight, like, oh yeah, the Zyllabus. When's the Zyllabus gonna ever pop up? And we got a Zyllabus. And the fact that they actually confirmed it's Mount Tantus, a big connective piece to the Thrawn trilogy in canon right now. Really cool. We got this really creepy Prime Minister, Dr. Hemlock, I believe is the guy's name. We got commandos. I got a total Jurassic Park vibe from the opening sequence mixed with Alien. The scale of this thing was so much better. Seeing the Empire trying to sweep this whole matter under the rug by getting the civilians and carting them away. Then basically having Omega as another focal point on the Empire once again. I'll be honest with you, this should have been the season premiere. I feel like this was a great way that you could have kicked off a season premiere because it gives you the risk, it gives you the intensity, and it has some like really like wow jaw-opening moments for me at least that I really enjoyed this episode. I'll throw it to Milton. What was your first thoughts, salvo, on this episode, man?
Before I give my initial impression, I do agree with how you mentioned it should have been the premiere episode, because this felt like a premiere episode. This felt like a good setup for what a season could be. With that said, I have one word for this episode: invested. After watching this episode, I felt invested in where the story was going, and even after you hear you saying like, this could have been a premiere episode, and there was things that were being set up, foreshadowed, continued from previous shows like Clone Wars with the Zyllabus. Because I have to remember that at the end of that episode, I think Palpatine makes a comment about that beast. He's like, "Hey, we gotta like do something with it or something like that." So if
He said I have more plans for you.
yeah, if you've seen Clone Wars, you would understand like why this beast was still around or why they still use the material of this beast to clone, whatever. And it was cool to see that. But anyways, it was nice to see that they could continue that story into Bad Batch. Also, too, it was nice to see that this actually was pushing the narrative of the entire lore of Star Wars, because we're getting obviously clones armor and weaponry being pushed with the Zyllabus and them taking advantage of his armor. You have Mount Tantus and what they're trying to do with the technology of cloning. They're saying trying to figure, because we still don't know what they want to do. We know it's about Palpatine. We know they're going to use that technology for Palpatine's purposes, but they never said it yet in the animations. So I'm waiting for them to actually say why they need. What's the doctor's name? The one that's from Kaminoan.
Oh, Nalase?
Yeah, like we need to understand like what they're going to use it for. I know they want our knowledge and their tech, but yeah, it was nice to see that we're seeing all these pieces and things being kind of laid out. It's like, man, we should have got this early on, because then you could have built off of this from previous episodes. This wasn't a filler. And another word I have for this particular episode, actually for this entire season, is failure. Because literally, the clones have failed. When I say the clones of Bad Batch, they have failed every mission they went on for said. Every mission this season. Like, they have not been successful since day one of this season. Literally, she's like, "Oh, go to the ship now, where there's goodies and whatever." They get there, a wild Zyllabus is there, and they can't capture it. They can't stop it. Another failure. So I think this episode was investing. I think this entire season has been about failure. I liked this episode. It actually wasn't bad at all. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was very much watching it from beginning to end. Now, the first 5 minutes I was shaky on, because I was like, "Oh, we'll get to see Sid."
Oh.
Then I was like, "Oh, no, we're good." Like, because as they were starting to progress, like, all right, this isn't a bad episode. And plus all the Empire stuff, I'm glued to the TV. So.
Totally agree. Ben, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head on all of those points, Milton. Like, for me, I can agree. Like, the big word I would have to say coming out of the episode would be invested and anticipation, because it made me actually excited for next week of Bad Batch. And I mean, I don't think I've said that so far in this podcast, other than leading into the actual show premiering. So I'm actually excited to see where the show heads now. Of course, like we do have to like tamper expectations because we have seen this before where we go from like amazing episode to filler or like a fall off episode, so we got to keep that in mind. But for this isolated episode, I thought it was so good. It was invested. It was just it was engaging throughout. Like you said, Milton, at first when I watched it, I was getting a little nervous. I was like, man, I don't know what Chris is seeing. We were 5 minutes in, and Sid, I was like, uh-oh. And then, it progressed, and I was like, okay, cool. We're all good here. And I think the way, like the animation, the way it was shot, the way, like the directing for the different characters, the Imperial characters were all really good. And then, of course, the Zyllabus surprise, like, that's been like you mentioned on your opening monologue, Chris. Like, that's been a big thing in the fandom for so long. Like, where is this Zyllabus? Like, it was such an I don't know, whatever the term is, like the untied string. It was like an whatever. Like, it was a loose end. It was basically a loose end that was still from Clone Wars. Like, where did that story thread go? And now they're finally addressing it. So I think that's really cool. And then the future implications, like them confirming the Mount Tanta's name, the fact that they're there, we know they're there cloning because of obviously the Palpatine stuff, like, or that sort of stuff's getting worked on, and it's just a matter of time. It makes me wonder if this stuff is going to eventually tie into Mando, or not Mando, like the Mandoverse as a whole. Once we get to Thrawn, like, whether it be an Ahsoka or Skeleton Crew, like, once Thrawn gets out of wherever he's at, are we going to see Thrawn going to Mount Tantus and we get a live-action Mount Tantus down the line?
Oh, there could be some good setup, retroactive setup that we had no idea was coming. Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, we all know that from the sequel trilogy, but now we can understand, like, oh, when he does show up, oh, we know what that is. That's a cloning place, and we get the retroactive examples of what it is. But yeah, I want to start back with Sid. So I was really happy how they dealt with Sid. The fact that they didn't go back to Ord Mantell, the fact that it was a hologram, and Hunter straight up is like, let's drop this fool. Like, we don't even want to deal with her anymore. Tech is like, this is the last mission, don't worry. I was like, how many times have you heard that? Oh, this is the last mission, right? So could the next mission maybe be finally getting rid of her? I mean, we've got 5 episodes left this season. I would hope that they're dealing with her by the end of it. But yeah, I liked how they just set the standard about, like, you could almost feel yourself in the characters of the clones, really. It's like the clones are agreeing with the audience. Like, we're tired of dealing with her. Let's get on with our lives,
That's trash, bro. She's a waste. Get rid of her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was cheering them on. I was like, please, just say we're done, we quit, just something. Like, please. Like, we are so close to them finally getting rid of her.
Yeah, so getting into the beginning of the episode and just seeing the ambiance, seeing just the shadows and the use of tension with the clone commando, and I really love that part because, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of homages this season, whether it be pod racing, whether it be Indiana Jones. What was the other reference episode? I don't know. There's probably at least another one that was a big reference to something, but I don't know. I think that Star Wars always does so well with the horror. I mean, we've only had one other instance of horror in Star Wars, I believe, and that was with the brain worm episode of the Clone Wars when they were on Geonosis and it was the Queen and all. Like, and then they were on the ship afterwards, and that kind of reminded me of this with it was Ahsoka and it was Luminari Unduli. No, it was Barriss. And they were cutting the power to freeze the worms, and it was just a really sinister kind of thing. I got the same vibes from this episode, and it leads me to believe, like, they need to make a Star Wars survival action video game, right? Like, in a sense of like a Dead Space game with the Star Wars. Yeah, exactly. Make
Death Troopers. That would be a blast.
And get the motive team that already worked on Star Wars. They just finished their remaster or the remake of Dead Space. Get them to work on a Death Trooper game. Do it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I would buy that for $100 pre-order right now if they release it. Like,
seriously.
game on.
Yeah, but do you guys agree? Did you like the tone, the setting of this episode? At least in the beginning, where they had more of the horror vibes.
Yeah, no, it definitely worked. It made you think about, what was actually going on, because I didn't anticipate this being about a Zyllabus. Honestly, I didn't think that was what they were going
I
for.
got
I was thinking,
spoiled.
well, that's something to do with like bugs or something like that, something stupid. But
Yeah,
obviously, like how they revealed it was like, okay, and what I was like, all right, this makes sense. It's like, oh, Zyllabus. You knew, if you watched the Clone Wars, you knew how powerful that creature was, and to hear that it's immature, okay, it's not, really like under control. It's very wild. So yeah,
yeah, it was kind of annoying because I was on Disney Plus, and the Zilla Beast was front and center on the banner at the top of the screen, like a clear image of the Zilla Beast. Like, come on, like, let me at least get into the episode before you show the biggest part of the episode to me. But so at that point, I was like, okay, I gotta watch this episode like right now. It's gonna be a good. I knew this was gonna be a good episode as soon as I see that image. I was like, okay, I'm pissed, but I mean, at least this is gonna be a good episode. I want to talk about the design of the Zyllabus. As you mentioned, Milton, it was an immature version of the beast, but holy crap, it looked just like a xenomorph. Like, just the way it was like like it was suspended from the ceiling. You see like the saliva, the drool, and just like the way its head was like this bulbous head, not as like, didn't have the long neck at the time. So it was basically a xenomorph in Star Wars. Like, holy crap, that is horrifying. And then just seeing how it just grows over time. I feel like this episode was a good introduction for a beloved creature in the Star Wars galaxy for people that have not watched the Clone Wars. They understood it enough. They even made a reference to like, oh yeah, like Palpatine had this thing back before the formation of the Empire. So it shows you like, okay, like clearly like they feed off electricity, power, and that gets them to be bigger and larger and larger and larger. Was this the same Zyllabus from? This had to be the same Zyllabus from that episode, right? In the Clone Wars.
he said that they cloned it.
Oh, they cloned it.
Yeah,
Okay.
they
They
cloned
cloned
it,
it.
I
Yeah,
believe is
they
what
cloned it. They
what
took
it
it
was.
was. He said it was very similar genetic material of the Zyllabus back on Coruscant, and he said back then that's when Chancellor Palpatine made the order to put it away, start this experiment, and he made a point to say before he was Emperor Palpatine.
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah, because I was like, wait, how does the Zilla Beast go from really being super large to small again? Like I was a little bit okay, so completely cloned Zilla Beast. So
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean, I'm pretty sure. Wasn't there an episode? I think there was two episodes with the Zilla Beast and Clone Wars, weren't there? Like, didn't it call like the Zilla Beast Returns or something? Maybe that's part
Yeah,
two. But wasn't there a third episode where they actually like they were showing how they were experimenting on the beast too? I
Well,
thought there was.
they were. There was that one doctor that was working. She was like in one of those like hover car things, and it was like zapping
Yes.
electricity.
Yeah. So that made me think of that too. It's like, well, they were experimenting on. They probably killed it eventually, obviously. Then like harvest this material, and then obviously try to clone it, get the weaponry and the shielding like they mentioned here. So no, it definitely worked for me. I
Ye-
like this tone.
So what do you think they're going with experimenting on Zilla Beast? They're using their shields for what? Like armor plating for troopers' armor, or like what?
Yeah,
Or
I think
ships?
that's the impression I got. It was
Okay.
either for armor plating or some type of like armor for vehicles or whatever. I mean, again, this thing can handle blaster bolts and all that stuff. Like it cannot be penetrated unless it's by like a special laser or something to that extent. But um, yeah, I like what they're doing. It makes sense. I mean, I think we would do that in real life if there was a if I think of it as like rhino skin. If rhino skin in real
Hmm.
life could not be penetrated, I guarantee you the United States government or any world government would try to harvest rhinos and say, "Hey, we're going to use this for our military benefit to, be the most powerful nations in the world." Then they would.
Hmm.
So it makes sense that it took a very real life thing, put it in Star Wars, saying, "Hey, let's utilize a natural resource to try to like weaponize it."
Hmm.
Like that's always been like that in world history.
Yeah, and another thing to mention about this is Palpatine is always obsessed with armoring clones or whatever because in the novel by Timothy Zahn's The Thrawn Alliances, it takes place around Attack of the Clones. There, basically Anakin and Thrawn discover this factory that's basically creating cortosis laced armor for what will be the clone troopers down the line. So, he's always been obsessed apparently with trying to buff up the armor and stuff. But yeah, that's very. Maybe that's like the clone commando armor or something. But yeah, I just like the design. I like the attitude of the creature itself. The idea about let's talk about the idea of centralizing all the cloning to like one place. So they're like trying to bring all the assets around the galaxy to this one location on Mount Tantus because the Empire wants complete and utter control of all of its resources from that point on. So I thought that was really fascinating, just like seeing the Empire just completely dissolve an entire branch of itself to be like, okay, we are keeping this in-house because we have some very secretive things that can't get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense why they would do it. Like you said, because of just the whole overall conspiracy of the Imperial government itself with Palpatine. Like you've had, heck, going back to the original Star Wars movie. Tarkin talks about eliminating the governors and all this stuff and whatnot. Like that whole spiel. They still had to keep the government system in line. So like them keeping these type of like experiments and things under wraps is important because even at this point with Palpatine's power and everything, like if this stuff would get out, like you could potentially have like a galaxy-wide revolt, like going like, hey, what's going on here behind the scenes? Like why is he doing all this stuff if we're supposedly safe? So I think it's a cool aspect that they're keeping the whole Zyllabus stuff as well as like the other Mount Tantus things under wraps, just because I think it'll contribute to the story down the line more for Bad Batch and potentially in like the Mandoverse realm of shows as well.
Mm-hmm. What do we think about the overall journey of the clones and how they got involved with this episode? Because my one critique about this episode, and maybe this will come back to be a larger factor, how the heck did Sid know that like a top secret Imperial ship just got stranded? Like, what is their source on this stuff? Like, how did they just arrive there before the Empire got there, first of all? Like, that was like, huh? So that threw me off a little bit, where it was very convenient. I'm happy they didn't waste time around trying to figure out where it went in the first place, but I'm also scratching my head saying, okay, what happened here? How'd they get this information?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, I'm not surprised that she would know. It just makes sense for her character. Like, she's resourceful.
She hangs around with sketchy people.
Yeah, I would say, I know we don't like her, but, like, she's resourceful. But to me, it didn't really feel unusual. Because there's probably so many things she does know about because she has resources and people in her life, so.
Yeah, like I really didn't have a big issue with that personally, just because like, I feel like there's plenty of instances in Star Wars where you could point to that was convenience, that was convenience, that was convenience, like that sort of thing. Heck, look at we're talking on this cloning stuff. Look at how Obi-Wan found Kamino. Like he got like inspiration from that kid talking to the youngling talking to Yoda, and Yoda gave him some guidance, so he decided to go and like look it up, and it happens to be like the only planet, like, just like, I feel like there's a lot of like series of events, things that you could look into as convenience in Star Wars, and you just have to like turn your head the other way on it, because it's like, all right. Or heck, even look at like Luke in Empire Strikes Back. Like, what are the realistic odds that Han is gonna find Luke in the middle of the Arctic, basically? Like, I don't know.
It's the Force, man.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of like little convenience things that you could point out like that.
All right, true.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm gonna have a very high score on this episode, but that's literally like the only thing I could think of that's like a critique for me right now. Yeah. Speaking of the episode, as far as the clones, what do we think of Bad Batch's role in this episode, Ben?
I thought they did a good job with the characters, with the whole crew. I
I thought they did a good job with Omega. They didn't make her terrible like they have on several of these episodes this year or this season so far. I thought they did a good job with her, with Hunter, Wrecker, like the whole crew, Tech. Like I think they've done a really good job with them this episode. It just felt, I don't know about you guys, but this episode just felt natural. You know, like the episode flowed really well. The from both the Imperial side and the Bad Batch side, like it just felt natural. Like their story arcs, it didn't feel weird because you know we've had episodes prior where it's like, oh, Omega's like, you know, look at the episode a couple weeks ago when Omega's like, oh, you know, she keeps falling for these people, like, oh, you know, I want to help this guy out, I want to help this bad guy out, I want to help this bad guy out, like a lot of dumb decision making. In this episode, I feel like there wasn't just dumb decision making; it was just a good, like if they could just stick to this model of this episode, we would have an incredible show for 16 episodes.
Yeah, I agree. So they're trying to build up, as Milton cleverly, you know, pointed out, right? Just failure. I mean, look at this season, literally is failure. They failed every single mission. They've really driven it to us probably in excess amounts where, okay, maybe we didn't need as many of those missions where they failed, and they could have propelled the plot a little bit further because there's not a lot of plot in this season. There's a lot more character, and arguably I wish there was a little bit more character. One thing that keeps getting me going is they were hinting at Boba Fett season 1, and Boba Fett has not been mentioned once this entire season. So I guess they just completely dropped that storyline, unfortunately. But that was something I was really looking forward to. But that's neither here nor there. As far as this episode, the back half of this episode was awesome because it basically morphed from like a horror movie to like a big budget action movie, disaster movie, where you have basically, whether it be Godzilla, King Kong, literally there's the same shot of like him up on the big antenna building there, and it was so fun seeing like this thing causing havoc, and just like a callback to the Clone Wars where it's causing havoc in Coruscant. I loved how we seen the Empire come in. I think that was the first time we seen like the newer, like unpainted versions of the Venator class Star Destroyers coming in and just unleashing all of the LAATs. Great shots. I love those shots of the swooping in of the ships, and just how the Empire was surrounding them, and they already, like, they were obviously trained on how to take this thing down. They're like, oh yeah, we've done this a few times. Like, oh, don't worry, we'll just fire our laser beams and it'll shrink and he'll fall and we'll get him. So I liked how fast and methodical the Empire was with dealing with that situation, but also the very dark effects of what the heck is going to happen to all those people. Because they don't want word of this getting out, right? They can't have anybody out there spreading these rumors and these lies, God forbid, to the galaxy. So they're going to take these people. What's going to happen to them?
Yeah, I mean, you heard him say like they'll deal with those people. Like, so, I mean, it's the Empire. So if we think about it, like in terms of canon wise, they're getting shipped to the Andor factories. I bet.
Are we sure? Are they at Mount Tantus? I was under the assumption that they're going to go to Mount Tantus, and if that was the case, I hate to say it because they would be basically human experiments at that point.
Right.
Oh, that's true. I mean, they could be going to Mount Tantus as well. Yeah, I mean, Mount Tantus or like the factories.
All the heroes that they're dead. They're probably
dead.
No more freedom.
Yeah, it's over for them.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Like this. I mean, as bad as that is to sound, like I like when Star Wars gets dark and a little bit like gritty like this. I mean, I don't know, that I like what I like, and when it comes to this more realistic kind of, I wouldn't call it realistic, but to me this is the stuff I like. That's why I like Andor so much, because it covered the same sort of territory and like all the time. So for me, it was cool seeing like the Bad Batch, and we know that the Bad Batch is all over the place, right? You can have that crazy episode of racing, then you can have the Crosshair episode where there's a hostage and they're taking her out, and all this stuff, and then you get an episode like this where they're taking the innocent civilians out of there. We don't know what's happening, so it's like, holy crap, this show really goes places, and it has some things to say, and I gotta appreciate it for that.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to appreciate it for the efforts on these episodes, but to me, it's like it points to a lot of things of. I don't know about you guys, but I view it like this. So we have 16 episodes to play with for this series. If you want to have some of these darker things in there, you could easily include more of them and just sprinkle in a few of the lighthearted one-off random episodes. So if you have 16 episodes, you could break the season up into 4 parts and do 3 on point, like serious type stories, and then 1 lighthearted la-di-da throwaway episode. And that would balance it pretty well. Like a 12-to-4 ratio would be a good setup. And I'm not saying like go super dark every single episode like this, you know, taking out civilians and stuff, or hostage situation in the one, but like, you know, I feel like they could lean into that more, especially when you have an experienced group of special commando clone troopers like the Bad Batch are. Like, you know, we could do, to me, the Bad Batch, they could be doing so much more than just Sid missions.
And if we ever get a season 3, I'm pretty sure like they're going to be with the rebellion at that point or something. And to be fair, we go back to the premise of what the Bad Batch was all about. And in that statement, it literally says like a group of mercenaries making their way through the galaxy. So I can't exactly fault them because they're sticking to their mission statement. These are a bunch of mercenaries. They're really bad at being mercenaries, but they're mercenaries nonetheless that are going through the galaxy. What's to say maybe they won't ever join a rebellion? And that's why Echo left, because he said, these guys got no hope. I need to do something more. They're obviously been reminded time and time again they're not going to budge. I'm going to do my own thing. But I can at least see that they're not going to be with Sid anymore. But yeah, here we go again. I get it, Ben. But yeah, they are really good at what they do. When they put their minds together, they actually overcome a lot of obstacles, a lot of barriers that maybe the normal grunt couldn't be able to get past because they don't have the experience and the training. So yeah, for me that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I agree, and you know, that's a good point that you brought up. I didn't even think about. You know, the door was open for them to join the rebellion already, so it makes me wonder if we're not going to actually get them joining whatsoever and just continuing to be like one-off mercenaries.
Mm-hmm. A cool little Easter egg, if you will. So that one multicolored commando has been confirmed as Scorch. It's literally in the credits. I know the first season he was unnamed and people were like, is he not? And it's nice to have a concrete answer, which means, you know what that means. I'm going to go back and I'm going to play Republic Commando because it is now canon. Yep. Probably not all the way, but at least the character from that thing is in it. So I'm more interested to go back and play the game to be like, okay, what was so cool about that character now?
Well, you know what that means? That means we need the final episode, which is titled Clone Force 99, we need that to be them versus the Republic Commando Squad.
Yeah, I remember we were speculating at the end of season 1. We were like, they're big bad. Who are you going to get to go against Bad Batch? But the actual Delta Force, Republic Commando
Delta
group.
Force.
They're perfectly synergized as far as they're the opposites. That'd be cool to see them hunting and butting heads in a couple episodes throughout the season. We shall see. I think all signs point to the Bad Batch might even end up on Tantus at some point. I really think. Especially if Omega, now we'll talk about Omega, especially if Omega gets captured, they got to bring her there. That's where everything else is. And if that's there, they got to pose a rescue mission. And guess what? I hate to say it, but nobody's getting out of that place alive. They can't. No one can get out of that place alive because no one has to know that the Empire. No one can know that the Empire has experiments there. You know, I mean, we don't. But to be fair, we don't know that the thing existed during the original trilogy. It's not to say like, oh, it was kept under wraps, like we never heard about it. Maybe they did dismantle it before Luke's time and all that. But I was just under assumption that this thing is going to be referenced in Mando, and it'll be like a new location that has been under wraps this entire time. The rebellion never even knew about it, but yeah, it could be a very it could be a very bad thing going into this. If anybody ends up there, it's like they're probably getting out alive.
I agree. I mean, that's a good theory.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm interested to see. We've seen some dark things like, the hostage things, some like this episode. It just makes me wonder if we're finally going to get a death from one of the main crew. And I feel like if anybody, it's going to be Hunter, just because he's like the leader, and it'll be like a noble sacrifice or something like that. It just makes me really wonder if we're going to get a death like that eventually. But yeah, we all know Omega's getting captured this coming week. Like, let's be real, that's coming. And then she'll get captured this week, probably, and then the following week it'll be like the Bad Batch is trying to like get someone from Sid to help, and it'll probably be that bad guy we reference from the pod racing episode.
Yep.
He'll probably be like, "Oh, I know where something or another is," and then we'll finally get to Omega 3 weeks from now, probably.
I think I know what's going to happen. It's just this is not the best kind of podcasting as far as speculating, because like the episode could come out on Wednesday where like all this time was spent for nothing. But yeah. I think all signs could be pointing toward Omega getting turned in by Sid to the Empire. She betrays the Bad Batch, gives Sid up to the Empire, and then that's how it happens. But we got a whole nother show to talk about, so we're gonna give our final thoughts and score out of 10. I'll throw this one off. I already put it out there, so it's gonna be a high score. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. This one is up there with was the mid-season finale. The mid-season finale was excellent. The Crosshair episode was excellent. I still enjoyed the Kashyyyk episode, but yeah, this one is a 9 out of 10. It had great tone, great thematics, themes there, really cool homages to Jurassic Park, to Alien, to Godzilla, had great galaxy resounding answers that we've been looking for ever since the season 1 finale. What the hell is that place called? Oh, it literally is Tanted. So we got a lot of great information and a lot of great plot development now, knowing that Omega is in more danger than ever, being sought out specifically by the Empire for their devious deeds. I'll throw it over to Milton. Final thoughts and score out of 10.
Yeah, I think this is one of the better episodes this season. I felt that had a really good direction. I liked how it was laying out, various directives and narrative storylines for the upcoming remaining season. I do agree, like you mentioned, it should have been probably the premiere episode, most likely, because it would have been a good tone setter for the season. Overall, I like this episode. I can't put it with the Palpatine episodes. They were so good. I like the Crosshair episode, obviously, so I think I gave those 9 or 10s from what I remember. So I'm going to give this one probably an 8.25.
There we go. 8.25 specific there on the decimals. Throw it over to you, Ben, for our final score here.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good points you both made. I think for me, I just really enjoyed the episode as a whole. It was engaging. It was captivating, and it just made me actually look forward to next week's episode. Like I said, I haven't been able to really say that for most of this season, so that's a nice feeling to actually be excited for something for once, with versus like how many weeks, guys, have we gone into the Bad Batch going, oh, this is like a chore? I mean, we talked about it weeks prior, where I mean, look, like you, Milton, for example, you were watching the Bad Batch episodes an hour or two before our podcast on Fridays because it wasn't really a priority, because it was just like, whatever, like, who cares? Like, it is what it is. So the fact that this episode was engaging and really good like that, it got us kind of back on board with the show, I would say, almost in a really good positive way. And then just overall, I thought the episode was good. Like you mentioned, Chris, like the Jurassic Park references, like it just felt really good. And then the fact that they just brought the Zyllabus in, like, I mean, we gotta love it. That's a question we've been asking since Clone Wars. Like, where is this thing? Mm-hmm. So yeah, with all that being said, I will have to give this a 9 out of 10.
There you go. So high scores all around for Bad Batch. This season 2 has been the explanation, or the epitome of a roller coaster ride, up and down, up and down, up and down. So we will look with great interest for next week's episode 12. And here's the big one. We're finally talking about it. Mandalorian Season 3, the premiere episode, Chapter 17, The Apostate. I'm gonna throw an audible. I'm gonna throw it over to Milton for your first thoughts on this one. I think I usually been starting off first thoughts, but we'll go to you first.
Yeah, I would say I have a very similar point like I made with Bad Batch. Invested. Like I legit felt invested with this episode, and it was a good premiere episode. I think that's what I said. I think I said in our group
Hmm.
chat, I like the really like the beginning, really like the ending, and the middle was good. It was setting up things. It was getting us prepared for like, okay, this is Mando. He's back. He's setting the tone. Um, I like the direction. I like the visuals. I keep forgetting this is only a streaming platform of a show, but the budget says otherwise.
Hmm.
It's a film budget. I don't care what
Hmm.
anyone tells me. It's a film budget because literally you look at all the other shows that we've had for Disney Plus for Star Wars related, and they don't have the budget like they did for the show,
Hmm.
and that makes sense because this is the flagship show of Star Wars. It's a flagship show of Disney Plus. So I loved how it looked. I loved the music. I loved
Hmm.
the very. It felt like we were back with old friends. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like this episode a lot. It was really really good beginning and at the end. The middle was slow for me at times, but I think they did that on purpose just to set up things. So yeah, I like this episode. I was very pleased with what I watched.
Hmm. Yeah. As far as my initial impressions, I'm going to echo a lot of what you said, Milton. I was in from before the credits or even stopped because it was something that they switched up where they had the hammering sound before. As the title card was coming up, like, oh, that's different. This is not usual. This is something special going on. What the heck is happening? And I was worried. I'll be honest, I didn't tell you guys yet, but I was worried with that first sequence. I was like, ooh, this is not going good right now for this show. And we're gonna get into it. But my overall thoughts are, yeah, this is a good way to set up a season. As you said, Milton, I feel invested enough to be like, okay, I'm happy that we're not grasping for straws here, being like a bunch of stuff thrown at us at once and being like, oh, what is going on here? What is going on here? As we said last week, it turns out the rumors were correct. This was a very short premiere of an episode, and we know that is not indicative of the quality by any means because this felt more like a 45-minute long episode, at least on the first watch. I watched it twice now. But there was a lot of character, a decent amount of characters. But there's a lot of locations, right? We go into like 3 different locations in this one episode, which definitely helps make it feel a little bit larger in scope. And it definitely was a larger scope in story. Just all the characters that Mandalorian is familiar with already. We're getting new characters in this Captain Gorin or whatever his name is, the big swamp thing guy that we're going to get into a little bit here. But yeah, I'll be honest, wasn't blown away. And that's okay because this show, I think at this point, doesn't need to blow us away because it's done that enough with like the big cameos in season 1 and season 2. So while it's a little bit of a downer for me that we didn't get like some big like, oh my gosh, this is going to break the internet moment, I think it does bode well for the show to be like, look, okay, we don't need those moments to sell the show and to make it feel like it's a good setup for this season. So yeah, solid start for me so far. What about you, Ben?
Oh yeah, for me, it was a really good start as always. Watched it at 3 a.m. So that's just to a test right there. Like for me, liking it at 3 a.m. is a good sign, considering when I was watching Bad Batch at 3 a.m., I was not liking that show at all. Um, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Like it was fun. Like you said, the episode length was short, which I've seen people say, oh well, that's like my only critique of the episode. My thing with that is like, would we rather have a 5 hour episode with a bunch of junk in it and a bunch of filler and drag it on? Like I always use the example. I know it's not like popular to say, but I'm not a huge fan of the Pattinson Batman movie because I just feel like it's drug out. It's almost 3 hours long, and I don't like it. So like to me, if they would cut that movie down to 2 hours, I'd probably like it. So I don't mind that the episode was shorter. And yeah, I thought they did a good job with reintroducing us back into the Star Wars universe, the Mandoverse. Like it just felt as you pointed out, Milton, it felt like we were back with old friends. And to me, like it really felt like Star Wars was back. Like it's been a while because, like I said, I had random messages from people I haven't talked to in so long saying, "Hey, have you watched the new Mando episode?" or "Mando's back," or stuff like that. So those type of things are great. And also, we got to keep this in mind too, Chris. Like you bring up like the like there was no like big potential like internet breaking thing like Boba Fett or Grogu in the first episode of season 1, like things like that. But the thing is, when it comes to this show, it's so established now. Now they can do a premiere like that and be fine. And to be realistic, like those type of the character cameos like Boba Fett to open the season, that can be huge for like us hardcore fans, and of course it's huge for the mainstream audience. But let's be real, guys. Like the moment for the mainstream audience was Baby Yoda hugging the Babu Frick species character. Like that was the internet breaking thing. Like I've seen that meme, and I've seen that GIF everywhere. Everywhere I've seen that GIF of Grogu hugging him. So like the thing is, that's literally all they need to do to break the internet. Basically, is like do little cute things like that here and there. If they don't have a big cameo, that is. Of course, if you have a cameo, it changes things. But in terms of the episodes where there's not, you still have this episode still had a solid story to it. It had a good setup for the season of where we're heading to next, and then of course you had some great moments with Mando and Grogu and the other characters involved, such as Grief Karga and some of the other characters. Like I thought it was a really well done episode.
Yeah, what I really like about this episode is the fact that we have already multiple plot threads. Plot A, plot B, plot C. Right, plot A, obviously, very simple, very cut and dry, not a lot of nuance. Okay, Mando's got to go back to Mandalore, and he's got to bathe in the light waters of whatever and do whatever. But then along the way, he's already given side quests, if you will. This reminded me a lot of a video game, right? It was like, in which season 1 was very much like, okay, he's going to hand in a quest and get more armor or a new weapon, something like that.
Model.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, we got IG-11. That's going to be another side story of him putting him together. That was a cool thing we'll dwell on in a few minutes here. And then the fact that there's pirates also messing with Navarro, that's a whole nother can of worms that's now being opened. So I really enjoy the fact that we're getting these side plots here that help enrich the season and make it feel larger than just a smaller scope on one character.
All right. Yeah, I like that we do have those multiple plots being, fed into the show. I do think it's funny every time I hear like when he mentioned, bathing in the waters. I always think of Dave Chappelle, because Dave Chappelle has the Rick James Prince joke about like purifying yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka, and I always laugh every time I hear that joke. And that's when he said about I need to go to Mandalore and get in the waters. I'm like, oh my god, like this is a funny Dave Chappelle joke if he was watching this. But like I do like the lore of Mandalore. I'm curious to see that, and I think obviously Clone Wars has really heightened what Mandalore is in this show. And what I'm saying is, if you watch Clone Wars, if you're a fan of that show, the whole Mandalore arc in Clone Wars was great. You had the Death Watch and all them, because you even hear what's her face, Katie Sackhoff's character. I should know this. Yeah, Bo-Katan. She talks about like it being a cult, and that she's thrown that word out there multiple times when she's on screen. It's like that's how Clone Wars was with like Death Watch and their cultish behavior, and then wanting to bring back the old ways of Mandalore and blah blah blah. And now you have obviously Din Djarin's people and how they are with the old traditional ways of Mandalore, and then you have Katie Sackhoff character who's like, she's like, no, that's that coldish crap. Like I take my helmet off. And here's another thing. I maybe you guys can help me with this. I'm sorry. There's no way I'm keeping my helmet on the whole time. Like I'm sure that helmet is hot. Okay, there's no way. So that like I do think it's foolish that they are punishing him for this. However, I get that's their religious aspect of how they're looking at this. So I get it. Like I understand it. Just it is kind of foolish when you really think about it. But I understand how it works for the show.
Yeah, and what's nice about this episode is the fact that we get to see that initiation ceremony, baptism, if you will, basically is what it was. I enjoyed that because it's getting the viewers out there be like, all right, this is how Din Djarin became who he was. And I was actually confused, and I think a lot of other people were. I was like,
I thought it was Baby Din at first.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was Baby Din Djarin. I was like, wait, what time period is this? But so that was neat, being able to see what was going on from their perspective, and then juxtaposing that to seeing Bo-Katan just like lying on that throne, helmet off, just chilling there. It was interesting though that planet wasn't Mandalore. I think a lot of us were thinking in the trailers that shot of her on the throne was like the Mandalorian throne. I thought it was, at least, but it's like Kalamala or something like that, which is I think a new planet in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's I think that's a totally new planet in Star Wars. It's supposed to be like in the Mandalorian system, I believe, like around our Mandalore system, somewhere around there, from what I've heard. Um, but yeah, like that was like an interesting sequence, seeing her there, and it's really interesting, like the whole aspect with Din with his helmet. Like, I guess that shows you, then again, like to like kind of counter your point, Milton, like, or to throw a counter argument out there to your point, like that just shows you, how dedicated like Den is to like his beliefs, like his belief systems, basically. So like I can like respect it, but it's like, man, like you said, that thing's got to be getting hot. Like, unless he has like a little button you click and it's like air conditioning inside his helmet or something. Because it's like it's really interesting, the fact that he does that. And also another thing, guys, to throw out there. I mean, it may sound comical saying this, but like, so whenever we get to that point, because we know eventually Din's probably going to get to the waters, whatever, the mystical waters or whatever they're called. Like, is he going to like take off all his armor and wear his helmet into the water? Like, like I don't know how it worked for the Mandalorian.
That goes back to my point of how silly it sounds, because it's like, you got to eat, you got to bathe. You know what I'm saying? Like, why?
Well, we already seen him eat.
Yeah. I know he takes it off, but they showed his head from the back. I get that. It's like they're so bizarre about it. I mean, and again, I will say one of my favorite parts of this episode was seeing the boy get the helmet and him like and indoctrinating in that faith, in that religion. But it's like, all right, so you're telling me when you're about to have relations with somebody, you got to keep the helmet on?
Leave the helmet on.
Yeah, because if I'm trying to talk to a Mando chick on the low, I'm taking my helmet off. I got to see her face. You feel me? So like, that those people got to reproduce. So
Milton, they're just a society that wears masks when they're doing the dirty.
Nah, bro. Nope. Because you know what? My luck would be if I'm one of those people messing with a Mando chick, they got a busted up face and busted up teeth. I ain't about that life. So nah, I gotta see. I gotta see your face. Take your helmet off.
Speaking of helmets,
that's great.
Yeah, speaking of helmets, here's a little nitpick. I feel like I've been doing this a lot tonight, but the helmet of the kid, just the quality just looked like something from Hasbro. I don't know about you guys, but I was a little thrown off.
Part of that.
What?
Okay, I liked it. The quality of the helmet is what it is, but I do like that they added the detail. You hear the helmet like sealing and everything. I love those little details, though.
Yeah. And it's funny because somebody on Twitter put a picture of the helmet, and they're like, "Yeah, this is literally something you could buy for $15 at Walmart." They showed because it's got like the wider view lens, so I mean it makes sense. Like the more I think about it, it's like maybe it's not as much of a dock for me because it's just like, all right, so if it's a kid, they need more visibility because they just got the helmet. They got to see it more around them. But for me, I think it was mainly like how wide. It looked like it would be like as if somebody created like a knockoff like Mandalorian helmet.
Well, another thing to throw out there about that scene, I honestly thought, I don't know about you guys, but see, I was thinking it was Baby Din. I was thinking that, but then I thought it was going to be like the, kind of the, technically like eventually we would get to a point in the series where he would like say to the armor, technically I didn't finish my oath or whatever, like, because that kid didn't complete the whole oath for the Mandalorian. So that kid basically is, if he's still alive at the moment, like that kid is basically he's not part of that cult. Like he's just like a normal person with Mandalorian armor. So at first I was thinking maybe that's how they're gonna work around Din's thing. Like, oh, technically I didn't say that, but then it ended up just being a kid.
As far as the plot A, if we will, of going to bathe in the waters, I don't know. I'll take it as it is for face value, but it's just always so weird to me. Like I try to take myself as like the nerd out of the equation. Like, oh yeah, we as Star Wars fans know what the heck that is. Like can you imagine like the everyday person watching this show and be like, what the heck is the mission? He's got to go in this place and wash himself and then comes out and he's fine again. Like for me, it's just a little bizarre, but that's Star Wars for you. I mean, we got wizards in space with lightsabers, so hey, that's what it is. Yeah. But
I mean, it's that's why, like, honestly, I agree with Bo-Katan on this. Like, I think it's very weird and cultish.
Yep.
Now, again, it's very fascinating, and that's how real life religion is. I mean, there's different sectors of Christianity, like Brethren, Lutheran.
Yeah.
You got the Catholic viewpoint,
Baptist,
you got Baptist, you got the Pentecostal, all that. So understand that there's different viewpoints and pathways to take in religion. Like I said, bro, you're not making me keep a helmet on. I'll say that right now. Look, I think being a Mandalorian is pretty dope, pretty cool. I will, if Star Wars was real. If I had to be a part of that particular group, yeah, that'd be cool because I feel like it's very much a brotherhood, family, tight-knit community. It's great. We will all love that. However, I'm like, listen, I got to be able to show my face off. I got delicate skin, so let me take my helmet off, people.
I'd be with Katie Sackhoff's playing a Mandalorian.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
My thing, just like the practicality of it, like I don't know about you, man, but like. I don't want to be sitting there eating a bag of chips. What am I going to do? Put a chip in my mouth, put my helmet down. Put a chip in my mouth, put the helmet down. Put a chip in my mouth, put the helmet down. Like, what? Like, what's going on here? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's funny.
Or
but like,
do you have to keep it on? Do you have to keep it on when you're taking a smash on the toilet? So I'm not trying to be wearing a helmet when I'm trying to take a crap. All right. So no.
Man, that would get hot.
Exactly. I'm stripping down. Okay. I'm taking the helmet off. Done. That's my private time.
Practicality of Mandalorian armor podcast.
Oh no, it's this is the way you got to keep it on when you're pooping. Nah, I'm good.
Milton would be sitting on the toilet sending a Snapchat going, "This is the way."
You might as well kick me out the coat because that ain't gonna happen. Like, come on.
Yeah, as I alluded to off the bat here, I was a little bit worried within the first, 10 minutes of the episode because. Yeah, we got this cool sequence of the kid, and then it was a big creature fight, and I was like, I literally just said like, oh no, is this what they're gonna fill in like half the episode with these random Mandalorians just shooting this gigantic alligator? That's what I was like, oh my gosh, like is this what it has come to? It's just like a blaster fight with a freaking I was thinking, I was like, how is this like pushing the story forward? How is this really doing anything at this point for the story? Because it's just like, yeah, why would you have your ceremony, first of all, on a beach when you should have had an idea there's like a vicious creature that's the size of a freaking yacht weighing in late for you to go into water and kill you? Like, but luckily that's when Mando showed up, and once he did, I was like, okay, I understand, like, this was meant to show the power of the Mandalorian. He comes in, everybody was fighting, dying, and he comes in with his fighter and just decimates it. Like, that's like him getting respect. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, I'm down with this. But up until that point, I was like, oh no, like, did we wait 3 years for just like a giant creature fight for 15 minutes? That makes no sense. Like, that to me got me a little bit. But then on the second watch, then I was able to actually enjoy it because then I realized, oh, there's all these awesome looking Mandalorians fighting together. And we've seen Mandalorians fighting together in episode 3, but I'd say there's a lot more of them, and there's a lot more time watching them, whether it be using the whipcords, whether it be using the flamethrowers, whether it be using the wrist rockets and everything in between. A lot of courageous moments of like the armor running in, getting the kid, and then the kid getting pushed out of the way as what's his face, the big heavy Mandalorian comes in and like fires at the mouth of the thing. So I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but at least at first I was like, okay, where's this going, kind of thing.
I thought it was a flashback originally. I thought I was thinking, well, okay, this is how Den became part of the group. I was like, but then obviously with him coming in with the ship, I was like, oh yeah, he's going to use this maybe as a redemption point. To counter your argument, not argument, but your viewpoint on, them being in the water and that type of thing. I thought it was a cool ceremony. I was like, oh, this is cool. Let's see how they become like indoctrinated in this religion or faith. That creature reminded me of like the Lake Placid like alligator.
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh,
that's exactly what I thought too, Milton.
I was like, done.
Exactly.
I'm like, let's go. And then they just couldn't kill it. And then all of a sudden when Mando shows up, I was like, oh, this is tight. That's when I knew. I was like, okay, we're gonna be in for a good season because it's good action, it's some good storytelling. I like this. It kept me invested. I was like, all right, this is dope. Then obviously, like I said, it kind of fell off a little bit in the middle for me. Overall, I love that beginning of the episode.
Okay.
Personally, for me, I have kind of a different angle on it from both of you guys, actually. I think it was a really good moment for the episode, for a lot of the audience as a whole, potentially the mainstream audience, because I think this could plant the seed in a lot of people's heads, like, this is what Den had to go through. Like, this is, even though that kid wasn't Den, that was Den, like, getting indoctrinated. Like, them just showing the strictness of that, like, solidifying the whole cult aspect. Because, we talk about the cult and, like, potentially the general audience, like, wondering what's going on with this cult thing, like we mentioned earlier. But I think, the main point of that whole sequence was to solidify the audience, like, hey, this is what Den is dealing with, like this is like the cult he's in, like this is how he grew up. It's solidifying that whole aspect of his character, that it's like, he had to get indoctrinated into this cult. I mean, you hear the armor like giving this strict speech to this little kid, and it's like, man, so a kid realistically probably doesn't even know the choices they're making at that point. So the fact that they're committing to this thing, like, that was pretty much, like, to me anyways, it was kind of like their lens to show a lot of the audience what Den had to go through when he was a kid.
Yes, Paz Vizsla, that was the Mandalorian, the heavy Mandalorian thing. There we go. The voice by Jon Favreau himself. But yeah, no, like I said, off the bat, I enjoyed the fact that we're diving in, like you said, Milton. It's great to see that we're getting really deep into that Mando culture that we had that first represented to us. Because Mandalorians go way back, right? Obviously, before Clone Wars, they were seen as the warrior people, going all the way back to the time of the Old Republic. I mean, you've seen vastly different kinds of Mandalorians back then. They were all warrior-like, and well, we're basically seeing the warrior-like ones back with both sides, whether it be Bo-Katan, whether it be the children. What are they called? The Children of the Watch now?
Yep.
Okay, yes. Like so them. Let's get into the middle area. So this is where I think the show really shines for me, because it shows the power of Filoni and Favreau in tying into so many corners of the galaxy, whether it be into dare I say it, the Rise of Skywalker with bringing in the Anzellans, to IG-11, to a lot of different factors around the Star Wars universe, which I just really enjoy the way they put in Easter eggs, the way they build off of things that we didn't even get anything with the Empire in this. It was really cool. Just seeing what's happening with Navarro, just seeing again like that level up perspective. Okay, season 2, things were better. Season 3, the place is almost unrecognizable. I mean, there's so much grandeur, and it's part of the Hiding Way, which is a nice reference to the Old Republic, a very famous trade route and hyperspace travel there. So it was really cool seeing how well Grief Karga is doing. He's doing so well. He even has droids holding up his cape as he's walking down the street. So this guy's, but it's really cool because it's bringing us that story where Mando, maybe he should settle down, and Grief Karga is just giving him this lecture and offering him a piece of land. Like, you could just literally stay here and live like a king, essentially. But he is very honor bound by what he wants to do, and it comes back to the importance of where he comes from, the people that saved him, the Mandalorians. But yeah, I want to get your thoughts overall on what you thought of this little interlude at Navarro, and yeah.
It was okay. Like I know why it was there. It served its purpose. I get it. They were trying to set up things, plant things, as you mentioned, when it comes to like certain story plots. But I was just like, I wasn't really invested in this part of it. Now, they did drop a couple good, character things about what's her face,
Cara Dune.
Yes, like what happened to her, what happened to Gideon, how come they didn't like ask someone from the old or New Republic to come be a sheriff or marshal or whatever. Yeah, like it was nice to hear those things, but it was kind of funny too. Something, oh wait, yeah, she really got recruited. Obviously we know her situation. But yeah, it was good hearing some of those little things being thrown out there. However, I just felt kind of just okay with this certain part of this episode. I was like, all right, like I know he wants his robot. I know he's trying to get this figured out, but it's like, all right, it was kind of a waste, I felt. But then I'm like, it was necessary. I would say it would have made it better. It could have tightened it up, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to it, it was great getting the backstory, a little bit of exposition right on the galaxy about Moff Gideon. He's at a New Republic tribunal. Cara Dune, I like the way they handled it. It wasn't like, oh, she's just dead by some pirate or something. Like, yeah, she's out there. Maybe one day she'll come back somehow. Maybe Disney will make an agreement. If that's the case, she'll come back. If not, then we don't ever have to see her again. So I like how it was more of an open-ended, but at least we kind of know what the character's up to at this point. So I feel like both parties on the matter maybe are both satisfied by that. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the interesting point with the Cara Dune thing was, based on the way like John and Dave have talked recently, and then now the way they resolved it in this episode, it just makes you wonder if eventually down the road they purposely left the door open to potentially bring her back, because they didn't slam it shut. Like you said, they didn't say, oh, she died in a ship explosion or something, like, so they left the door open. But the interesting part is, I mean, he said she's with like the Rebel Special Forces, like on a mission or something, I think is what he said. So it just makes you wonder, like, what exactly they're setting up with the rebellion as a whole too, based off that conversation. So you have that little breadcrumb in there. And I know, that's another thing to throw out there as well. Like this week, I actually listened to an interview with Emily Swallow, who plays the armor, and she talked about how like John and Dave are like laying breadcrumbs all throughout this series, like for fans to pick up on. Like she did like volunteer that information. They're purposely like putting out breadcrumbs for the audience. So it makes me wonder like what little tidbits and things like we're leading up to. And then I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of anxious now about Grief Karga and Carl Weathers, because Carl Weathers is such a good actor. Like he's so positive and everything, but now it makes me anxious because I know I'm going to be so sad because I just feel like he has the makings of the perfect character, like because he's like the mentor character for Mando, kind of. Like he's like the perfect character to get killed off to like, push Mando further into action or something. So it's just like, man, it's going to be so sad if he does get taken out eventually, because Carl Weathers plays him so well.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to have at least once a season, you have to have him saying, "Hey, Mando," like, he always does. And then the fact that like he's just so confident in himself. He's having his droids carry his cape and stuff. Like I just think they did a really good job with that part of the episode. I personally didn't have a problem with it. And I like the setup, like you said, Chris, like the little tidbits, like the IG droid statue thing, like, you know, the different species, just like checking out how Navarro has been kind of like reborn to a degree. Because, you know, we've had multiple years since like the first season of Mando, like in real time, and then like, you know, why after, you know, reviewing the tape of like the controversial tape of John and Dave talking about how many years have gone by, like, for my interpretation, for any of our listeners that may look into that stuff, so John basically said like that the time that's passed in Mando is basically like equivalent to our real lifetime. So basically, it's 3 years since season one, basically. So you know, so basically, it's cool just seeing that progression of them going from like, you know, how crappy Navarro was to like you said, it's just like blossoming and like turning into an actual safe space now. I mean, gosh, they have a school.
Yeah, they have a school. We've seen that. We've seen that the last season as well, when Grogu was stealing the little blue cookies from the kid with the Force. That was a lot of fun. As far as the school, we could talk about, I guess, the pirates at this point, since we're already talking about the school. That was something that I sort of also had a problem with, because I feel like, these guys, I mean, maybe it was the show's prerogative or whatever to specifically point out how stupid these guys were. I think how idiotic they were to be like, oh, this is not a bar anymore, we're going to shoot you. Ha ha ha. Like, it was just a very random encounter, but it was so Star Wars in that way, where I was like, I can't really fault it on how it was handled, the situation. But, and going back to Grief Karga, seeing how he was in action, just like this guy, you know, he looks like maybe he still got it, right? Like, oh yeah, he could easily just be settled down and lost his touch because he's dealing with like governing this place and all that. But no, he's still a scoundrel like he's always been. He's still the guy that was holding the whole bounty guild together even after the fall of the Empire. So this guy still has it. And it's great to see Grief Karga in the first episode, because that bodes well for him to be, I think he's going to be a lot more prominent than season 2. I think anything will beat his appearance in season 2. He was only literally in one episode. The fact that he's directing, I think, one of the episodes about halfway through the season, usually that's probably the episode he's going to be in as well. So I could see him almost, maybe even as a regular this season. But getting more into the pirates, first off, another bone to pick with maybe Lucasfilm, Star Wars. Why does every pirate have to be a Klaatuian, a what is it called, the tentacle guy with the face, a Quarren, a Nikto, a Weequay? It's like they picked the same 4 guys. Like, Favreau and Filoni love those 4 aliens as pirates, and their whole species has been given a bad rap because of these 2 creators. But I had to point that out, because I just chuckled to myself every time that these guys are getting typecasted as the worst people in the galaxy. I'm sure there's some good ones. Why don't you make one a Jedi one of these days? A Weequay Jedi, that'd be really cool, right? But it was cool seeing like the criminal element, because, you know, Mando is of bounty hunter origin. He's always going to be dealing, or at least dealing with people that are dealing with the scum and the villainy of the galaxy. And I got to go also into the puppetry with this show, because I think the prosthetics on the faces fall into that category of, oh my gosh, like seeing that Nikto leader guy talking was so natural. There was no CGI at all. It was all puppetry. And I've seen this stuff in person at Celebration. They had a breakdown of the Cad Bane prosthetics and the mask that was worn, and there was no CGI. That was straight up like everything you seen. There was no doctoring up of CGI. That was literally like, that's how good they have the mechanics and the motors, the tiny little motors, because I've seen the mechanics of it as like the thing was extruded in the exhibit that they had, the different pieces that went together to create that look. So between that, how that guy looked, between how the animatics, the stop motion animation puppetry of the IG-11 attack when he's like half the torso, between the Anzellans and Grogu, I love the fact that Lucasfilm, with all the money in the world that they have, they're still hearkening back to the old ways of doing things with the practical effects. So yeah, kind of going, I know I went off a little bit of tangent. I started talking about the pirates, then I started talking about the puppetry, but like there's so many points that I want to talk about before they lose my brain, because I literally don't have half of the stuff that's coming out on my notes, so I got to get to it before I forget. But yeah, going back to the Pirates, what did you guys think about the Pirates?
This is why I didn't like the middle part of the episode. I thought I just didn't care. Like I didn't care, and that sounds horrible. I just was like, okay, like grief is gonna deal with him, and I knew he wasn't gonna die. I was like, oh, he's gonna wreck him. Do something to these people, and he did. They wrecked them all except for the one. And I will say the best part about that is when Mando said, "Are you sure you want to let him leave?" He's like, "Yeah," because he'll let him know that Navarro is, not a place to be trifled with.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, nah, just kill old boy. I wouldn't even let him get away. Just kill him. I just felt the pirates are just stupid traditional pirates. Like, oh, I want a drink. Blah 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 blah. I was like, oh my god. I'm like, get off the screen. I didn't care. Now, it may come back to where that particular semi-plot line might come into a factor. It could, but me at the moment, I'm like, this is stupid. I just want to focus on Mando.
Mm-hmm. Ben?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I think the pirate stuff was fine, I think, just because for a lot of things you mentioned, Chris, like I like the puppet design so much on like the pirates. I think or the prosthetic design so much on the pirates. I think it was done well. And like some of the stuff I feel like with Star Wars and these sorts of things, it's like it harkens back to like, there is some like cheesiness in Star Wars with some of it. So it's just like, to me, I thought it was fine because it was just like, hey, it's pirates. And to me, I guess more along the lines of, I guess to semi-justify it to you, Milton. I think it was to show like, hey, there's still some like scrounging rookie little pirates out there, and Grief Karga and Mando, they don't really care about them just because they're like, little tiny pirates. So I think it was more along the lines of that, like that they were maybe like a lower level tier pirate than say, I don't know.
Yeah, I love the fact
or something.
Yeah, they're so lower. I love the fact that they're so lower tier that it's acknowledged that he's like Grief Karga's walking away. It's like, oh yeah, go tell the scrubber droids to get this scum off the ground here. I just like no second thought. He's just like, yeah, just deal with the dead bodies. Just get it. This is the third group that came here this week. Just get rid of them.
Yeah, that's how I would personally like justify that. But yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from on that, Milton, where it was just like, hey, what's going on here? It's just kind of like, I want to drink. I'm gonna go in there and drink anyways, even though it's a school. Like, that whole thing. I would have liked to see actually not even Mando be involved in that action personally. I would like to see Grief Karga do it all just to basically like give Mando a lesson and be like, hey, see, like, this is for real. Just so Mando could have seen something. I would have preferred it to be that way, just so Mando will like realize there is like some danger out there. But yeah, I thought it was fine.
I don't know if you guys caught it, but I caught it on the second viewing. There's a certain pose that Din Djarin was doing that like literally looked exactly the same as like Boba Fett and Jabba's palace.
Oh,
where, like,
1000%.
He's like leaning like kind of like on one side up against the wall. He's just looking. He's like, you need help? Yep. You have a problem here? It's like, yep. I love that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, as far as, okay, so that dealt with Navarro, a lot of cool landscapes, cool creatures. I'm pretty sure I caught a glimpse of what's called a crew, which is the same species of a bat creature from the High Republic adventures. There's a creature named Cham Cham. I believe that's what that tan-looking bat creature was. You couldn't even really see its face, but it was like flapping on somebody's shoulder. So I immediately like, whoa, what is that? But yeah, so the cool thing with IG-11, didn't see that story coming. And it was interesting, because the recap showed him. I'm like, what the hell does this have to do with the show? Like, this was dealt with 2 seasons ago. First of all, I keep going off on tangents. I'm going crazy with this today. But I don't know about you, but I was like really shocked about how bare bones the recap was. Like, it didn't even show anything about Grogu. It just assumed that that Grogu was in Book of Boba Fett and all this stuff. I was like, whoa, they were very bold with assuming that everybody has watched that show.
I I didn't have a problem with it personally. I know us as like hardcore Star Wars fans. I've seen that discussion a lot actually around the Star Wars community this week, and like to me, I think that's a non-issue just because numbers wise, like the Book of Boba Fett's final two episodes had, it did better numbers than Kenobi. It did better numbers than like Mando season two's final couple episodes, Mando season one's. Like, so Book of Boba Fett was highly viewed. So I just think a lot of fans probably knew it. And let's be real, like a lot of the like really like general people that probably half pay attention, they probably just don't even care. They're like, hey, Grogu's back with Mando. Cool.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting from like the mainstream people. Like they might have not even caught Boba Fett, so they're probably pretty sure that guy was leaving with that Luke Skywalker dude. So how did he end up here all of a sudden? But they just gotta watch it, and it's interesting, right? Because when you look at how it's formatted with if this is, and this is where I'm battling with this in my mind, if this is all the same story, whether it be Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian, why isn't this like chapter why isn't this like chapter 24 instead of 7 but 17?
No, because like look at other shows that do crossovers, like
The Flash.
they're all, I mean, I was about to say the Arrowverse got multiple shows that cross over, and
They'd have 700 episodes then or something.
Now they'll say like for their special crossovers, like this is episode 1 of the crossover, 2 of the crossover, whatever. I think with this, like you need to have it be distinct of like these are the 17 chapters for Mando, these are the 6 chapters for Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, I'm cool with that. Like I don't need that. I don't need that continuity of Boba Fett in this show because it's a separate show. It's a separate, not separate world. It's a separate environment of what he's working on. He's got something else going on completely different than what Boba Fett's doing. Again, like Arrowverse, like Flash is in Central City, Arrow's in Star City. They got completely different villains, issues, storyline, that type of thing.
So a big connection, and I ran through, you have this connection to IG-11, you have this connection to these characters over here. We almost skipped over the whole idea that there's a huge ass connection to the Purrgil and Star Wars Rebels. I mean, how did you guys react to that? Because I immediately kind of like audible noise, like, oh,
Oh yeah,
go ahead, Ben.
That was in a really exciting moment for me, actually. Watching this at 3:00 in the morning, like, there's few things that'll like get you like really wide awake, and that was like, holy smokes! Like, they made a full-blown connection to Rebels, and the fact that they did it in such a way, because I think that was kind of their backdoor way of basically like, to the fans like us in the know, like the hardcore fans that are following every detail of Star Wars, just to put in, again, like I said, Emily Swall literally said, like breadcrumb, to put a breadcrumb into the series, like, hey guys, remember, we still know this is connected to Rebels, like this, Ahsoka, like, we know this is leading to what you guys are thinking of eventually, because, the Purrgil took Thrawn and Ezra. So the fact that they did this is really interesting in a way, just because like there's a few factors. It makes you wonder, it's really cool that Grogu like witnessed it, and I think they did it in such a cool way where it was like Grogu was kind of like us in that situation.
Yep.
Because I don't know about you, Chris, but like, and Milton, it was just kind of like, to me, it was like amazement scene, because it was like, holy smokes, like we're getting Rebels live action on screen right now. And like, so like we were kind of like Grogu in that situation, just being like blown away, like holy smokes. So yeah, I thought it was great. I loved it.
It was great just seeing how they look, but like not actually seeing how they look. Like I like the effect of just the shadowy figures, and if you know, right? Any other person might have just been like, I don't know what the hell that is. It's just something in space, whatever. But we're like, oh, we know clearly what that is. And I made a video about this as my little deep dive video for the week on Mandalorian. I'll be doing those again. Just like the ramifications. First off, like Grogu, oh my gosh, is he connecting with them the same way that Ezra might connect with them? Also, this is pretty much a confirmation. I feel like that this season we're gonna get Ezra, and we're gonna get Thrawn, at least more of a tease later down the road, because they're already setting up the viewers to be like, hey, look at these things closely, because they're gonna show up again very soon.
Well, to throw out there real quick, before you go, Milton, just imagine this, guys. What if they're using these to set up eventually, maybe late in the season? What if we get to a point in this season where the Purrgil will do something like they did to Thrawn and Ezra to Mando, though, and he gets sucked away to
Oh shoot,
different part of the galaxy. Like that could be a potential thing, because Mando didn't really realize it. Grogu was, so it just makes you wonder what they're gonna do with this whole Purrgil thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think after seeing that, it was fascinating. It was definitely a good highlight of the episode, because we never would have thought that would have happened, and hopefully that does lead into something that's important when it comes to obviously seeing Ezra, hopefully, or Thrawn, hopefully. Yeah, it was cool to see it. I did not expect that, but I wasn't blown away by it, just because I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because it's Dave Filoni. Again, I shouldn't be shocked, and I don't think I actually was. I think I was just like, oh, and realized that was going to happen, and it was cool to see it, like, in what it could look like in real life, or I guess live action.
Yeah, and like you said, Ben, I think that was that moment that we're looking through Grogu, as he's the lens that we're looking through in that moment where we're in space. And the fact that Star Wars, after all these years, can still lead to that moment of wonder where we're like, yeah, we've seen this, but not like this before. And it was kind of like this moment of magic,
Yeah, well, the fact that, like, to me, it really brought me back to the little snippet of Rogue One when you hear General Syndulla and you see what's the droid,
Chopper.
Like, it really brought me back to that moment in the theater. I still will never forget to this day. I was sitting next to my cousin. I elbowed him. I was like, dude, they actually connected the TV show into the damn movies. So like, it really was that moment for me. Like, I just felt that moment all over again, but even more now that we're actually seeing it like full blown, like focusing on it for a scene. Like, so I just love that they're getting into it. And like you mentioned, Chris, I think if you ask casual fans, they'll probably, heck, they might have forgot about that scene by now, but they probably will view that scene and probably think it was the like a similar space worm that like ate Han's ship, ate the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they probably will think it's something like that. And then once we get to seeing them full blown, because let's be real, we know we're going to see those things full blown at some point now. Now that they barely introduced them the way they did, like we're going to see them eventually, and it just makes you wonder: is this going to be? See, this could either be two things. It could be, like you mentioned, Chris. It could be more ramifications for this season, like for down the line, like maybe episode 6, 7, 8 or something. And keep in mind, too, so this first episode, directed by Rick Famuyiwa, then episode 7 and 8, Rick Famuyiwa. So, like, Purrgil in this episode, maybe we get more Purrgil in 7 and 8. But it just makes you wonder, it's either we're going to get them more down the line in this season, or it's going to be something like Boba Fett was in episode 5 of Mando season 1, where you just see the boots, and then we get Boba in season 2. So it's either going to be like we actually get the Purrgil, or maybe it's for the Ahsoka series, or maybe it's for Mando season 4, because John already said he's done writing season 4, so maybe that's a breadcrumb that's saved for that season.
Yeah, well, we're gonna watch on with great interest and expectations. But speaking of space, Milton, you're alluding to, hey, this is a TV show with a film budget, without a doubt. Holy crap, this space scene with the dogfight was unreal for TV. This is the best thing I've seen. And I'm watching this on, I'm gonna gloat a little bit here. I'm watching this on the big big screen TV. I'm just like, yeah, this is who needs to go to the movies? Like I watch Star Wars on the small screen like this every single week. So that was a lot of fun watching it in that format. But yeah, I mean, just the intensity, the speed, the sound, the sound of the actual Naboo N1 starfighter sounds like a hot rod. It's flying around, and you're getting the perspectives. I love the designs of the pirate ships and the way that they're filming like the inside of the cockpit like they did with the original trilogy, and you see all aliens. In fact, I have to give them props. I gotta give them props. I don't know the species name off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that was a Sassy Tin type of alien in one of those ships. Because he had the tendrils. Either that or it was some kind of Twi'lek, but
I do think the new main pirate is a totally new species though.
Yeah, but one of the dog pilot people. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this brought me back to 2002. This brought me back to the 2002 preview I seen on the news channel of reviewing Attack of Clones, and I remember watching it as a kid going, holy crap, this movie looks awesome because it's got Slave One flying through space. And I was like, Dad, I have to go see this movie now. Like, I got the same kind of excitement watching this little sequence. Like, what? They actually pulled off an Attack of the Clones level, like, length of a space sequence in an asteroid field with a Naboo starfighter picking off these guys. And, like, you feel like the Mandalorian is a predator. Like, he's stalking these people, picking them off one by one. Like, that was amazing to me. I don't know if I'm blowing this out of proportion, but I enjoyed the heck out of it. This is my favorite part of the episode, without a doubt.
Yeah, it was fire. It was good. I mean, it's all. Anytime you get a space battle on Star Wars, it's worth watching. It definitely. It didn't seem like it was a streaming type of a show. It looks like it's from a movie. I mean, I was very impressed with it. It definitely had that episode 2 vibes for sure.
Yeah, because you go back to season 1, and we had a dogfight, but it was the most rudimentary dogfight. You gotta agree, like, they didn't know if Mando was going to be successful. They didn't know, like, any kind of budget for a streaming service at that point, because it had never been done with Disney before. So they're like, okay, we're going to just throw one fighter against the Razor Crest. We're going to have them doing a couple of loop-de-loops, and we'll call it a day. And then they're like, oh, yeah, we've seen how we did that. In season 2, we added an interplanetary battle between 2 X-Wings and the Razor Crest there on that ice planet. And now they went all the way. And I wouldn't even say they went all the way, because I feel like there's probably even bigger battles that are going to happen this season already with these Star Destroyers and stuff. But just the fact that we dialed up the intensity, that it's a lot more kinetic, just the camera angles, it was awesome. Yeah, Ben, what is your thoughts on this one?
Oh yeah, I thought the entire space battle was done really well. You know, that's all I was saying throughout it. I was like, man, this is like movie theater quality type design and graphics, and the way it was shot, just everything. I thought they did such a good job on it, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Like, it just brought back those like Star Wars space dogfight vibes. It really did. Like you said, Chris, kind of like Attack the Clones with Slave One and Obi-Wan. Like, it really brought back that kind of like dogfighting in the skies vibes, and I just think they did such a really nice job with it.
Yeah, and what got me even more hyped is, like, the guy's like, boss, I'm taking him back to you. And then it goes over the asteroid. And it is this beautiful ship. It's this beautiful, I'm pretty sure it's an Eclipse class Star Destroyer, which is basically an Imperial ship that was, I'm pretty sure that's an Imperial ship that was commandeered by pirates and customized. Now, I'm hoping that we do those. I'm hoping that we get those, like, after episode, like, little things on StarWars.com every Monday, like we did before, to, like, give me an actual name of that ship and, like, a little blurb about what the hell that ship is about, because I need to know about that ship. And the fact that I think for the first time ever in Star Wars, like, we're looking at, like, a capital ship for a independent smuggler or, like, pirate operations, because last time that we got something of this caliber was in, actually, believe it or not, Star Wars Resistance. There was this group, and I went over this before in the episode. Wouldn't you know that the leader of this so-called pirate gang was a Quarren? I'm telling you, the Quarrens, they don't got a good look, man. Every Quarren you see, they're up to something. And we got like this really cool like smashed together like ship that was like a part of an AT-AT, part of an Imperial shuttle in Star Wars Resistance, and seeing like this big ass hulking ship that has like fighter docks and stuff. And then we go inside and it's this crazy new species in Star Wars, which finally like we're getting new aliens. I love how they're paying homage to Return of the Jedi stuff. Like they even have like a Return of the Jedi like tusk creature thing, which I don't know the species. I'm gonna have to look that up. But the green gobbledygook guy that was basically Swamp Thing cracked me up because I'm sitting there as like, part of it looks like a Trandoshan got like thrown into like a toxic vat of chemicals and grew hair that was plant-like. I don't know, but I sure as hell was like, okay, I'm interested to know about this character. It's one of those like crazy Star Wars species that is going to show up on memes everywhere, and it already has, and everything else.
Oh
That's
yeah,
a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
oh yeah, for sure. Like it's cool just getting like new characters like that, introduce new character designs. And then like you mentioned, Chris, like the whole fact that they had the big Imperial ship, like that's great. And I'm just really interested to see where they end up taking those characters, really, because I feel like, of course, we haven't seen the last of them, I'm sure.
No, in fact, remember in the trailer, I broke down in the trailer that there was that same Eclipse class Star Destroyer.
Yep.
I think it might be the same one, but it's in a different device. So I know these guys are showing back up again, because at that point you have the N1 Starfighter with a Astromech R5 droid is in the back. So we're going to be making a pit stop at Tatooine at some point, picking up the droid, and then fighting the pirates once again. Just like any other good TV series does, it sets up some villains in the beginning to show the strife is, and you revisit maybe once and then maybe again that season of like resolve conflict. So yeah, I mean, that's as much as I wanted to point out for this episode. We and later on they go to the planet with in the Mandalorian space. We talked about that with Bo-Katan, about how her demeanor is completely different than the demeanor of the other Mandalorians, hence setting up that strife. I thought it was a little weird how the episode ended there, especially watching it the second time. Like Mando's just like walking off and it just ends unceremoniously. So kind of like Andor happened a few times that way, where it was like, oh wait, that's the end of the show. Oh wait, there's not like 10 more minutes left. Okay, it's I guess next week. But yeah, so that was a little bit like, huh? Oh, okay, it's over.
Yeah, I do think one interesting thing though that we haven't mentioned yet from this episode
Okay.
was when Mando was talking to the armor earlier in the episode. The whole conversation about, of course we know Mando's gonna go to Mandalore. Obviously, like that's the point of this season. But it's interesting, like the fact that like Mando knows something knows Mandalore is habitable or something, because he mentions to the armor like Jawas scavenged this piece of rock or whatever it was, earth material, I guess, or like Mandalore ground material or whatever it was. Like Jawas scavenged it, so like it's that's like an interesting little detail they threw in there. So it really makes me wonder how they're going to make Mandalore look in live action. I'm so excited to see it.
Yeah, and that's going to be, well, you don't know if it's going to be, because Filoni and Favreau don't like to have other people writing stuff in their sandbox, but I'm like, in the future that'll probably be a little comic book or something like, ooh, how did Jawas get the glass off Mandalore?
Right.
Some story there. But yeah, no, that was a good point, because it's like, yeah, not everything has to be explained or shown on screen. You could have a little bit of mystery, and you need that with Star Wars. It shouldn't be every second of every person's life that you know. You want to maintain a little bit of secrecy, a little bit of imagination for some good fan talk along the way. I'm going to check my notes. I think that's everything I wanted to make sense about. Something going back to having some sort of person that's watching over Navarro, a marshal, if you will. And I just instantly thought of, oh, they got one on Tatooine. He's in a back to chamber. So I feel like we could be getting a Cobb Vanth appearance at some point, now that Boba Fett kind of took took the reins of his planet for the most part, has everything in control. Maybe we'll get some Cobb Vanth doing some good old marshalling over there on Navarro at some point.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking that too a little bit, but I'm thinking, well, he might just stay on Tatooine. I feel like that's where he needs to be, but we never know.
Yeah, I feel like what could happen is like you're gonna get this really big battle, and Grief is gonna be there, Cobb Vanth is gonna be there, and the day's gonna be over, and then Grief's gonna be like, hey, I need a marshal. And he's like, hey, I'll be your marshal, or some like random thing like that. But
Oh yeah, I could definitely that's like the perfect type of like cheesiness I could see in this in just in Star Wars in general. Like we could all imagine that. Like, couldn't you just imagine Carl Weathers going, "Hey Cobb, there's a job opening for me on Navarro to be a marshal. What do you think?" Like, I could just see Carl Weathers saying that. So I could actually that makes a lot of sense. If Cobb does make an appearance, I could easily see that happening. And I'm interested though to see when we do go to Tatooine this year, because obviously we do like it makes me wonder, like, will we see Boba Fett? Like, are they just gonna skip it and just like mention, oh, Boba's off? Is Boba? Are they gonna pull like a Cara Dune thing with Boba, where it's like, oh, Boba's he's out flying around today. He'll be back later.
yeah. Do you guys have any final thoughts on this episode before we go into score out of 10 here?
Yeah, overall, this is a really good premiere. I mean, I can't really say it's bad. I can't say it's trash. They did its job. It was definitely a good way to set up the story, set up the season. I'm looking forward to what the next 7 episodes are going to look like. I think there's a lot of potential for this to be a really good season, as the first 2 were. Hopefully, they continue to expand the Mandalorian culture, as I'm sure they will. Hopefully, we get to see some cool cameos or some cool like tidbits of things that we aren't expecting. So, overall, I like the premiere. I can't really say many negative things about it. And I guess I'll just jump in with my score. Overall, I'll just say this is probably an 8.75 for me.
8.75 for Milton. Agree with a lot what you said. As I said off the top, I had a couple nitpicks here and there. Wasn't as explosive. I kind of take that back because, as I said, that space battle was really, really something special for me. But as far as like setting up the story, did everything that a premiere should. I feel like it could have improved on a few little things here and there. So I can't give it a perfect score, but I think settling on an 8 out of 10 is about how I feel about it right now. But great start. Looking forward to seeing the rest. It's crazy. It's like, oh yeah, we only have 7 episodes, right? It's like 7 episodes left already.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. But yeah, for me, I'd have to echo a lot of your guys' points. I think the episode was very good. It was a good start to the series. I didn't have an issue with the runtime at all, just because it did its job. It got the story told, and that's all we need. So I thought it was done really well. It was a nice reintroduction to all the characters, whether it be Mando, Grogu, Greef Karga, the armor, even Bo-Katan to some extent, to see where she was at in the story. They did a nice job when it came to like the action sequences, whether it be the space battle. I enjoyed the little street fight thing with Greef and the pirates. I thought that was a fun little thing. And then just setting up where we're going, really. Like we're setting up, like we mentioned to open the episode. We have the main plot of Mandalore. We have like the subplot of the pirates. We have the subplot of the IG-11 stuff still. And we have these little subplots they're introducing, which are a really nice portion of the series. And of course, getting that like big Purrgil moment, I thought was really nice for all the hardcore Star Wars fans. I really, really, really appreciated that. And then, of course, I have to throw out there, it can't be a Mandalorian review without the fact that they went and did a super cute Grogu moment with the Babu Frick series. Everybody loved that. Everybody loved that. To me, I would have to give this episode an 8.8 out of 10.
8.8 out of 10, and me and you both gave Bad Batch, what, a 9 out of 10?
Yep.
So there you have it. I
here's
somehow enjoyed the Bad Batch more than Mando this week. I don't know how that was happening, but...
Well, that's incorrect evaluation though, because Bad Batch has set the bar so low. We're fine with about anything, but when it comes to Mando, the bar's so high, like for good storytelling and good
Okay,
action.
all right, that's fair. That's a fair explanation.
That's why, because if you think about it this way, if we're spending 10 or however many episodes, 8 out of 10 episodes in the dumps, and then we get a really good Zyllabus episode, of course we're going to rank that a 9 out of 10. But maybe we wouldn't rank that a 9 out of 10 if the episodes of Bad Batch were better. So I think that's why we looked at it this way with Mando. But yeah, it was a good start to the season. Like that's the important thing. It was a good start.
Yeah, correct. And the good thing is, if you've watched the trailers, most of the trailers are on episode 1. So we're going into a lot of this season with like absolutely nothing that we know of. I mean, we know a couple things with like the gauntlet fighter flying around the same environment that looks like Bo-Katan's on. So I feel like Empire's going to find her and try to kill her, and that's going to happen there. But other than that, yeah, shot on Tatooine and maybe one other random thing, but it's not a lot. So it's going to be a lot of unexplored territory. And real quick, the one thing is like, yeah, the IG-11 thing didn't see coming. There's no significance of him in any of the trailers or nothing. So it's like, oh, that's great. We're getting a whole plot line on him that we didn't know anything about. So very cool stuff there. It's great to see when Star Wars is not leaked.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that was a nice little plot there, or a little new plot point that we weren't expecting at all, and just a little teaser for our audience. If you've heard like the general like chatter from a lot of the critics, like Christian Harloff or like any of those people, like they said the second episode of this series stepped it up big time from the first. So I think we're in for a big treat this coming week.
Yeah, and I think here's my thing on this. So there was a screening, I think the night of, in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it was with Favreau, Filoni. The whole crew was there.
They only showed 2 episodes, which is interesting. They only showed 2 episodes. I don't know, but I think they wanted to show 2 episodes because the second episode would really be the one that gets people talking. And they simply wanted Mando to be on Disney Plus longer than 7 weeks. So they're like, well, unfortunately, we're going to have to put out just the 1 episode. But I think in a perfect world, they probably would have done like a 2-episode premiere. But since they want to draw it out as long as possible, they were probably like, we'll just let people simmer on that for a week.
Yeah. And it's like, to me as well, I don't know about you guys, I don't even know what to expect. With that chatter being so high in the second episode, I mean, it's got to be something with Mandalore.
They're going right to Mandalore,
right?
I'm telling you.
It has to be because or at least maybe attempting to go to Mandalore. Maybe they attempt it, and I don't know, the pirates come back for round 2 or something. I don't know, but it's got to be something really cool because, like I said, so many of the critics that saw it, the chatter is really, really high on this episode, this second episode. So it's just like, I don't know what could even be.
And I just heard the same thing with Bad Batch episode 12.
Yeah.
People are like, oh my gosh, Bad Batch episode 12. In the chat room here, people were saying Bad Batch episode 12 it's going to be real good too. So we're going to have a good double header again next week.
Hey, that's the important thing. Keep this. See, this is all we want. Just good, solid Star Wars to keep the fun going, so we're not just sitting here for 2 hours going, oh man, this isn't good, this isn't good. Fun.
All right, we're getting Aaron Daly is giving it an 8 out of 10. Great start to the season. As far as Dirk Nerdy Gonzo is concerned, he's saying Bad Batch episode 11 is a 9 out of 10, matching my score. And he's saying Mando season 3 episode 1 is a 7 out of 10, almost a 6. But that IG-11 being rebuilt scene were the highlights that raised the episode quite a bit for me. So there you go. You could join everybody, such as Battling Boston's and Christopher Weber and Dark Nerdy Gonzo and Aaron Daly and Sims. You could join everybody in a chat every week at 9 o'clock Eastern as we will talk about Mando over the next couple weeks and the remainder of Bad Batch Season 2. We would love to have you guys joining in on the lively discussion here. And as always, you could always download, if you are busy, the episode after the fact, but please get back to us. Give us your thoughts after the fact, getting back to us at our Twitter handles, at outerrimtransmission, at gmail.com, and the various other places that we gather around on the internet. So there you have it. What are you guys going to be up to this week, Milton? And where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm going to be just unplugging away from people, man. Just taking this weekend just to get away and relax because it's been one heck of a week. But yeah, I just want to get away for a little bit, just focus on me. Go to a sporting event. I'm not sure, but just to do something just low key this week, honestly. People can find me at Twitter at Milton Weber 7 or Instagram at Milton 7 Weber.
All right, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be probably pretty much chilling as well, just finishing up a couple shows, getting excited for the next episode of The Last of Us. That's been getting really good, and then just the normal like fitness stuff, working out, meal planning, and continuing the diet. Like I'm down a couple pounds this week, so that's nice. And just kind of chipping away at that really, and then of course talking Star Wars and fitness on the internet to different people. So you can find me talking about that stuff at Real Ben Maynard on Twitter, and then on Instagram I'm posting like all my fitness stuff. You can find me as well at Real Ben Maynard.
Yeah, real quick side tangent right in the 11th hour here. Forgot to mention this. Last of Us, man. That show is something else. And I always say this with Star Wars, like the first, I try not to see a lot of these actors and other things before I see them in Star Wars. I like to leave like their character in Star Wars as a lasting impression of the actor. Hence, like Hayden Christensen will always be Anakin Skywalker. Harrison Ford will always be Han Solo before Indiana Jones. Pedro Pascal might always be Joel before he's Mandalorian. I'm not even kidding. Like at this point, like I love that show so much. I love the character of Joel that he plays so much that I'm starting to... It doesn't help that he's covered by a helmet the entire time. But now I'm watching Mandalorian and it's screwing with my head because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Joel talking through a Mandalorian. Like, that's how it's become for me. Like, I am that attached to that show. Like, every episode is basically like a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10 for me. It's the type of show where I watch it and I have to like stop what I'm doing after I watch it and just sit there and decompress because it's so heavy and it has so much to say and it's so thought-provoking for me watching that show that it's like, I don't know how anything could be better this year on TV. And I love The Mandalorian, but I don't know what else could possibly be better than The Last of Us this year because it is that good for me as far as just really good television from a character perspective, me, an acting perspective, a setting perspective, everything.
Well, I think of course all the writing and everything is great and everything and blah 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 blah, all that stuff is excellent that you mentioned, but I think that's more of a testament to HBO's quality. Like I've said it forever, HBO's quality is unmatched, like for all the streaming services, including Disney Plus. Like take House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is the best, in my opinion, like one of the best shows we've seen in years. From the last Game of Thrones, basically. Like because HBO, I don't know what it is, HBO's quality, like it just looks different. I mean, even when you have high quality Disney shows like, we talk so highly of Andor. Like I'm not the biggest fan of that series, but I can say the cinematography and everything look great, but it still doesn't look for some reason, I don't know what it is, if it's the lighting, the way they shoot things, but HBO, their Game of Thrones series, Last of Us, everything, it just looks better than any of the series on Disney Plus. I don't know why, but they just do. It's just like the quality is so high. I think that's a big testament to HBO. And then for me, like to throw out what I recognize Pedro as, like I love him as Mando, love him as Joel, but for me, like the impact his character had on me, like in Game of Thrones, was so big. Like
the Red Viper and Martell.
That was the most shocking. His death, I don't know. Like for me, I'll never like unimprint his whole like sequence of him like fighting the mountain and everything, and then getting his head crushed. Like I like that. I'll always forever associate him as that character, just because it was such like a holy smokes, like
Uh,
they just did this type of a death like with a character. Like I think that's why I always associate Pedro with that character from Game of Thrones, just because it was like such an iconic scene from that series.
yeah.
But
So.
yeah, he's been really great.
Yeah, so check it out if you want something with Pedro Pascal. You want something to hold you over for the next episode of Mando. Then there's a couple episodes left of season 1 of the Last of Us there on HBO Max. And finally, for me, you can find me on YouTube.com right here on YouTube.com/Starrapter, talking about Star Wars comics, breaking down Mando episodes, deep dives into certain specific little topics that I find fascinating, particularly on the channel here. And you can see me live on Saturday, April 8th, at Star Wars Celebration XL Center at 4 o'clock p.m. their time over there. I will be talking about bounty hunters, smugglers, gangsters, the scum and villainy through the years with my pal Dominic Jones from the Star Wars Underworld, and special guests will be joining us there. So yeah, if you're going to be around, I know the panel schedules aren't out yet. I'm assuming they're going to be out pretty soon since I got my time slot, but there you go. Be on the lookout for all that information if you will be at the convention this year. So for Milton, for Ben, for Chris, aka Starrapter, this was the Outer Rim Transmission, episode number 98, creeping ever closer to that big 100 triple digit episode. We'll see you guys next week in transmission.